Part 4 of The Watcher's Tale, Brothers. Elohim sat straight in the wind-backed chair. The pain in his head started to subside to a mild throbbing. Jacob walked over him, trying to grasp some sort of understanding of everything, but remembered what someone said. Not everything is meant to make sense or to be clear just now. With that in mind, Jacob continued walking toward Elohim. Is there anything I can do? Jacob asked. Elohim shook his head. No, thank you, Jacob. I must apologize. I did not mean for you to be dragged into this mess. Was he dragged in? Yes and no. Jacob did feel some sense of drive to see how everything would end. You didn't exactly drag me into this, Jacob returned. Sure, I had no idea, and I can't see, neither did you, that all hell would break loose. You don't need to apologize. You wanted me to write your story? Well, you'll have one hell of a story to tell everyone, especially your family. Elohim let a slight grin crease his face. From your lips to God's ears, he said. I need rest. If you'll excuse me. With that, he slowly stood up and began to walk, but lost his footing. He stumbled, but Jacob ran over and braced the large man. Elohim thanked him and steadied himself. Thank you, Jacob. I have it from here. Jacob hesitantly let go of his arm and watched with apprehension as Elohim slowly walked out of the office and down the hallway. The idea that a man who had such power and presence would now appear to have the strength and ability of an old man, Jacob just couldn't fathom. He began to worry for his new friend. Friend? He said out loud. Are we friends? This is a very strange friendship. He laughed a little, and then had the idea to record everything that had just happened. He took out his tablet, powered it on, and began to write down the day's events so far. You want a saga? I'll give you one. Elohim reached his room, opened the door, and walked in. He closed his eyes for a moment. The memories in the room flooded his mind. From love to embraces, to their dance, to their favorite song, tears began to streak down his face. The pain of the separation was tearing at his heart and soul. God, I miss you, he whispered, hoping his message would carry on the unseen connection. Opening his eyes, he walked to the queen-size bed, which was still made. He refused to sleep in it the night before. He looked at the pillowcases, which both had sayings on them. Elohim read what his pillow had said aloud. She protects me. He smiled, and then looked at Atheria's pillow. He protects me. The smile faded. If only I could protect us all from this. Elohim sat down on her side of the bed and lay down. Instantly, a wave of tiredness swept over him. Closing his eyes, Elohim fell asleep. The smoke drifted over his body, and like a flash, Elohim sat up, but found himself no longer in bed, but sitting at a charred table. He tried to stand up, but quickly found that his legs were chained to the wooden boards on the floor. His wrists, too, were chained to the table. Anger and confusion set in. He tried to break the chains, but that failed. Dear brother, your strength will not help you here. Elohim's head shot up. He looked around for the voice, and then noticed he was back in the cabin, or at least what was left of it. Then the voice came again. What? Don't you like where you're at? Truthfully, it took some doing to bring you back here. What do you think I have done to this place? How do you like it? It took me some time to get past your wards and ruins. To redecorate, he said with joy of tone in his voice. Show yourself, coward. Elohim knew that the voice in the shadows belonged to. Show yourself, Matthias. Elohim said that with a sting of anger in his voice. Out of the shadows stepped a thin man, dressed in all black. The only color piercing the darkness of his wardrobe was a crimson red tie. Hello, dear brother, he said with a hiss in his voice. You never answered my question. And what was that? Elohim spat. Matthias walked over to the charred and fragile banner, barely hanging on the blackened hearth. He reached out for it. and tugged on it. The banner easily fell to the ground in a pile of ruined thread and ash. "Oh my, that's a shame," Matthias said. Then in a flash of movement he reached Eloheim, slapped him hard on the face. Eloheim turned his head in pain. He fought his chains, and wanted nothing more than to be free so he could end his brother's life. Matthias laughed. "Oh, I hear your thoughts. And as much as you would love to end my existence, I don't believe Mother would be too pleased with you. Mother would curse you and your birth if she knew what you did. Oh, believe me, Mother would do far worse if she knew just how far I've gone." Eloheim looked at Matthias dead in the face. "What have you done?" Before his brother could answer, a sense of despair formed in the pit of his stomach. Matthias smiled. "Say it. Say it," he yelled. "You are working with the shadow, the darkness that has haunted myself and Atheria for all of our lives." Matthias laughed, his laugh filling the cabin and sending chills over Eloheim's body. "You fool! I am the shadow. I am that ancient darkness." Eloheim froze in place. Everything from the past was starting to make sense, like puzzle pieces falling into place. Atheria and Eloheim, though bonded for eternity to each other, have had a darkness follow them, trying to disrupt and separate them, even to the point of successfully keeping them apart for 4 lifetimes. But, why? Matthias, why? Matthias kicked the rubble of the banner, his face contorted. "Why? She was supposed to be mine," he yelled. The shockwave that came from his anger swept through the cabin, almost knocking Eloheim off his chair. Lightning flashed outside, giving the fractured cabin an eerie appearance. "I did not take Atheria from you. She chose me. The ancients blessed our union." "Oh yes, the mighty ancients. Fuck them. You do all this over blind jealousy?" "You're more a fool than I thought," Eloheim spat. "Me the fool? You, brother, are the fool, believing that no matter what, no matter the life, the age, your love will find a way." Matthias walked over to Eloheim and then straightened his mustache. "Let me ask you, favored, and the only worthy one, how worthy of her will you be when I banish your soul and send your flame to hell?" With those words, Matthias lifted his brother off the ground and slammed him down on the table, shattering the wood. Lightning filled the room. Now Matthias's power engulfing the cabin. He slammed his hard-toed leather shoe into Eloheim's side and kept kicking. You stole what was to be mine, and I will destroy everything you love." The pain shot through Eloheim's body. He felt the broken ribs against his lungs every time he took a breath. He can feel blood trickling down his head and taste the metallic nature in his mouth. Eloheim spat out some blood and tried to pick himself up, while Matthias moved away, walking around him like a wolf circling his prey. Eloheim slowly stood up, the chain straining against his ankle and wrists. His anger boiled. He tried to gather the energy around him and could feel his body absorbing the fuel needed to regain his strength. "You can't hurt me here, brother. You built this place as a refuge, a home of peace for Sabrina and Atheria. Now I have built it for my own purpose, to finish you. This cabin of peace and love will be your grave." Matthias spat and launched another attack on Eloheim, but Eloheim moved quickly, dodging his brother. While doing so, Matthias found himself stumbling over with part of the chain that was attached to Eloheim, now found itself wrapped around Matthias's neck. Eloheim pulled back on the chain, strangling Matthias. "You will pay for this betrayal." Matthias laughed between gasps, feeling the chain digging deeper into his skin. "Do it," he spat out. "I've seen you kill, covered in the blood of the battlefields. I know you." He struggled against the chain. "Then you know what I am capable of." He pulled the chain hard and bent Matthias's neck in an unnatural angle. "Return to your host and die," he whispered into his ear, and then snapped his brother's neck. Matthias's body fell limp, like a puppet having its strings cut off. Eloheim released the body and watched it fall to the floor, a lifeless heap. He took a breath, which sent pain throughout his body. The revelation that his own brother had been behind every instance that has been haunting his and Aetheria's relationship was heartbreaking. and sobering. For centuries, Elohim had thought it was some nameless ancient, bent on destroying the will of the ancients. Now, knowing his own brother, out of the misplaced jealousy, was the man behind the curtain, ignited the anger within Elohim, a dark anger that he had for lifetimes tried to seal and keep hidden. Out of nowhere, a large charred wooden beam shot through the air and hit Elohim, breaking his chains and sending him into the hearth of the fireplace, breaking the thick hearth in half. Matthias jumped out of the shadows, fully alive and seething in unholy rage. Elohim recovered and shot towards Matthias, catching him mid-air and slamming him against the logged wall, shattering the wood. Lightning streaked across the ceiling. Matthias laughed, spit out blood, and went in for more. He grabbed Elohim and drove his head into the ground. "Give up," he shouted. "Let it all go. The prophecies, love, dreams, plans, vows. Release them to me." Elohim whipped the chains towards Matthias. One he dodged, while the other found its mark, twisting itself around Matthias's waist. Elohim pulled back hard on the chain, yanking Matthias's toward him. Matthias grabbed the chain and dug his heels into the floorboards, snapping some, splintering more. The two brothers stood in front of each other, both radiating energy. Matthias more electric, whereas Elohim's eyes burned with fire. Heat radiated off his body. Then something happened that shocked even Matthias, for he believed he had his brother exactly where he wanted him, emotional, unstable, which would allow his anger to give way to his weakness. Then Matthias would strike, remove Elohim's soul, and damn the flame to hell, ending his brother's long life, making it impossible to return in another life, leaving Atheria detached and ready for Matthias to control and finally make his. Instead, Elohim spoke. "Leave this broken place and return to your host body. You've done enough damage." Matthias could sense that his brother's emotions, though raw and volatile, they were being controlled, just enough to shield himself from his brother's attack. Matthias laughed. "My host. He still slumbers in his mortal form. If I return, I'll wake him to his full dark potential." Elohim studied his brother. "Who is your host?" "Oh, you know. Do you not think that I have planned everything? If I couldn't have her then, I made a way to have her as my own." Elohim thought on what his brother said. Once he realized who the host was, his eyes grew wide. Matthias had been as clever as Loki, and patient, very patient, and masterful in his game of chess. Elohim realized this made an already complicated situation even more so. He closed his eyes to focus his thoughts, but then felt a shift in the energy. Opening his eyes, he saw that Matthias had left. Elohim searched the cabin and could feel that his brother, the darkness that had been haunting him in Atheria for 6,000 years, was gone. For now. Elohim knew Matthias would return again, and with more determination. Before that would happen, the cabin needed to be repaired, though he wasn't sure he had the strength, but he would try. Elohim walked to the center of the room, closed his eyes, and spread both his arms wide, as if holding up an invisible object. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. He started speaking softly, repeating the same cadence over and over again. At first, nothing happened. The room lay silent. Then a small glow emanated from the walls, like slivers of glowing silver dotted on every part of the cabin. As time went on, the glow became brighter, and the dots on the walls, hearth, floor, and ceiling took different shapes. The shapes of runes. The runes glowed brightly, and then began to flash. The broken beams, walls, hearth, floor, and glass windows all began to repair itself. Glass returned to the windows, appearing as if they had never been shattered. The appearance of the cabin changed from destruction to reconstruction. Every surface had been repaired anew. Even the banner that lay in waste on the floor now was mounted back in its original place, looking as if it had just been woven. The fire in the fireplace jumped to life, giving the cabin a cozy glow. Elohim opened his eyes and saw the new form of the cabin. He walked over to the hearth. He had one last thing to do. He began to trace the name of Sabrina, then Atheria. Lastly, he wrote his name. Not Elohim, but a name only known to Atheria. Adonai. The letters glowed, then faded away, disappearing into the wood. Taking a deep breath, and then letting out in a sigh, Elohim, without chains, opened the door to the cabin, gave the place one last look, and walked out. The end.